The Lost Ledger of Red Hollow. The Wyoming sky burned gold, its edges bleeding into ash as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the endless prairie. Caleb Reed, a weathered cowboy of 37, rode slow atop his bay mare, Juniper, her hooves kicking up dust that clung to his sweat-streaked face. His eyes, shadowed beneath a battered hat, scanned the horizon for signs of the 50 head of cattle that had vanished from Amos Granger's sprawling ranch. The tracks stopped cold, halfway across a stretch of cracked earth, as if the herd had been swallowed whole. Caleb's hands, calloused from 2 decades of rope and rain, tightened on the leather, his gut twisting with unease. He'd seen rustlers, wolves, and blizzards take livestock, but this was different. The air felt heavy, like it carried a secret it wasn't ready to share. It was late summer, 1885, and Caleb had spent his life driving cattle from Texas to Montana, living by the rhythm of hoofbeats, campfires, and the open sky. He was no stranger to hard country, but Granger's ranch, a sprawling empire of grass and barbed wire, had a strange edge. The hands whispered about a cursed patch of land out by Red Hollow, a valley they avoided even in daylight. They'd laugh it off over whiskey, but their eyes betrayed them. Quick glances, nervous shifts. Caleb didn't believe in curses, but he trusted the instincts of men who'd weathered the same storms he had. Granger, a grizzled rancher with a stare that could cut steel, had hired him to find the cattle, and Caleb wasn't one to leave a job undone. He reined Juniper toward a sagging cabin on the ranch's northern edge, its timbers warped and grayed by years of wind and neglect. Granger had mentioned old papers in there, maybe a clue to where the herd had gone. The cabin's door groaned as Caleb pushed it open, the air inside thick with the scent of dust, mildew, and something sharper, like old grief. Sunlight slanted through a cracked window, illuminating a rickety table strewn with rusted nails, a broken lantern, and a dented tin cup. He knelt by the hearth, his knife scraping against a loose floorboard, and pried it up to reveal a tin box, its hinges rusted shut. With a grunt, he forced it open, revealing a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed but intact, filled with the tight, deliberate scrawl of a man named Amos Turner. The name hit Caleb like a punch. Turner had been a Scotcher, running a small settlement called Red Hollow in the 1870s. But it wasn't just the name that stopped him cold. His brother, Jacob, had ridden through these parts in '74, chasing work as a drover. He'd never come back, leaving Caleb with a wound that hadn't healed in 11 years. And then, tucked in the ledger's back cover, he found a folded scrap of paper, its ink faded but unmistakable. Jacob Reed was here. Don't follow. Tell Ma we're owed land. Caleb's breath caught, his fingers trembling as he traced his brother's handwriting. Their mother had died years ago, waiting for Jacob's letters that never came. Land. What did Jacob mean? Caleb lit the lantern, its flame flickering against the cabin's dark walls, and read aloud, his voice rough in the stillness. June 12, 1874. The well's dry again, 3rd time this month. Folk are leaving, but they don't say why. They just pack and go like they don't remember staying. The entries grew stranger with each page. July 3, 1874. Saw the Miller place today. Empty. Not a chair moved, not a dish broken. Like they walked out mid-supper, nobody talks about it. Saw a man today, said his name was Reed, asked about the land, said it's owed to him. Caleb froze, his heart pounding. Jacob. The final entry, dated August 10th, 1874, was a desperate scrawl. "Red Hollow's going. Write its name down. Don't let it be forgot." A chill crept up his spine. Red Hollow hadn't just died, it had vanished, erased from maps and memory. And Jacob had been there, tangled in its mystery. The next morning, Caleb rode out to the valley where Red Hollow was supposed to be, the ledger heavy in his saddlebag. The prairie stretched wide, its grasses swaying under a sky heavy with clouds. Juniper snorted, her ears twitching as they descended into a shallow basin, the ground cracked like old leather. A lone cottonwood stood by a dry creek bed, its branches clawing at the air. At the valley's center was a stone well, its mouth choked with dirt and pebbles. Caleb dismounted, his boots crunching on the parched earth, and leaned over the well. A faint hum rose, a low, mournful sound, like wind trapped deep underground, or voices too soft to make out. He froze, his hand gripping the stone. Was it Jacob's voice, calling from the past? He shook his head, blaming the long ride and sleepless nights. But the hum lingered, tugging at memories he'd buried. Jacob teaching him to rope, his laugh echoing across Texas plains, his promise to send for Caleb once he found work. Back at the ranch, Caleb kept the ledger close, its pages a lifeline to his brother. He asked around, but the hands were tight-lipped, their eyes darting away when he mentioned Red Hollow. At the bunkhouse that night, a fire spat sparks into the starless sky, and an old hand named Silas finally spoke. His hands, gnarled from years of roping, clutched a tin mug. "Red Hollow ain't a place you talk about," he said, voice low. "Was a settlement, 20-some families, good grazing, till the wells dried up. Folks left, but not natural-like. No wagons, no goodbyes. Just gone. My pa said the land takes what's forgot." Caleb hesitated, then asked about Jacob. Silas's eyes narrowed. "Reed. Might have been a drover by that name back in '74. Asked about some claim. Said his family was owed land. Never saw him after." Caleb's stomach twisted. A claim? Their father had been a gambler, always chasing dreams of land, but he died broke. Had Jacob found something in Red Hollow? Caleb rode into Laramie the next day, a dusty town with a saloon, a general store, and a telegraph office buzzing with news from Cheyenne. He tracked down a Shoshone elder named White Elk, who sat under a sagging porch carving a piece of cedar, his eyes sharp as flint. "Red Hollow?" White Elk said, pausing his knife. "The land don't forget, but it don't forgive neither. It takes those who stop speaking its name. You hear it, don't you? The voices in the well." Caleb stiffened. He hadn't told anyone about the hum. "Your brother came too," White Elk added, his voice soft. "Asked about a claim, a piece of land his pa swore was theirs. He didn't write it down. The land took him." Caleb's throat tightened. He asked for more, but White Elk handed him a small stone, carved with a spiral. "Keep it close," he said. "Write what you see. The land listens." Back at the ranch, Caleb started a notebook, a habit from a surveyor he'd ridden with years ago. He wrote down everything. Turner's ledger, Silas's story, White Elk's warning, Jacob's note about the land. He sketched the well, the cottonwood, the valley's cracked earth. Each night he rode to Red Hollow, the stone in his pocket, the ledger in his bag. The hum grew louder, almost words. "Write it down." His dreams were vivid. Log cabins, a corral with horses, faces of strangers, and Jacob standing by the well, his eyes empty, holding a deed that crumbled to dust. Caleb woke with his notebook open to pages he didn't recall writing. Red Hollow, 1874. Amos Turner, Clara Hayes, Jacob Reed. Land owed. His hand shook as he read his brother's name, the ink fresh, as if written in the night. Granger's patience was fraying. "You're chasing shadows, Reed," he growled one evening, his boots heavy on the bunkhouse porch. "Find my cattle or you're done." Caleb nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd found traces in the valley, faint lines in the dirt, like foundations, half buried under dust. By noon they were gone, smoothed over like the land had changed its mind. He dug near the well and found a rusted spur etched with AT. He tucked it into his saddlebag, but by morning it was gone. Another day he found a leather strap, worn but intact with J, Reed scratched into it. His heart pounded as he held it, but after a sudden gust of wind it was dust. He began to wonder if the land was playing with him, or if his mind, worn thin by grief and sleepless nights, was breaking. Caleb's past was a weight he couldn't shake. Jacob had been his anchor. 5 years older, quick with a laugh, steady with a rope. They'd planned to work the trails together, build something of their own. But in '74, Jacob left for Wyoming, chasing a job with a cattle outfit. His last letter, postmarked from Laramie, mentioned Red Hollow and a claim their father had won in a poker game. A deed to land, supposedly rich with water and grass. Caleb had thought it a fool's dream, but Jacob believed it. Then, silence. Their mother died waiting for his return, and Caleb carried the guilt like a stone in his chest. Had Jacob found the land? Was Red Hollow the key? One evening, Caleb met a woman in Laramie's saloon, a sharp-eyed widow named Clara Dunn, who ran the general store. She'd heard his questions about Red Hollow and approached him, her voice low. "My aunt was Clara Hayes," she said, nodding to a name in Caleb's notebook. "Lived in Red Hollow. Left me a box of her things when I was a girl. Said the land was owed to someone, but she never said who." Clara handed him a faded photograph, a group of settlers by a well, Jacob among them, his face young and hopeful. On the back, in faint pencil, Red Hollow, 1874. The land remembers. Caleb's hands shook as he tucked the photo into his notebook. Clara warned him to be careful. Aunt Clara said writing it down keeps it alive, but it takes something from you too. Caleb returned to the valley, the photo and ledger burning in his mind. He camped by the well, the air thick with sage and dust. The hum was stronger now, a chorus of whispers that seemed to name the settlers: Turner, Hayes, Miller, Reed. He read the ledger aloud, his voice steady despite the dark. August 5th, 1874. The corral's empty. The church is gone. I'm the last one here. The land's owed, but it won't give it back. Write Red Hollow's name. The whispers answered, and for a moment, Caleb saw shapes in the dark. Log cabins, a fence, figures moving like shadows in a storm. He blinked, and they were gone. But his notebook was open to a new page. The words, Jacob Reed, owed land, written in a hand that wasn't his. He rode to Laramie again, digging through the county records at the land office. A clerk, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, found a file from 1874, a deed to a parcel in Red Hollow, claimed by a man named Samuel Reed, their father. It was never finalized, lost in a dispute with ranchers. Jacob had been chasing it, Caleb realized, his heart sinking. Had he stayed in Red Hollow trying to prove the claim? Caleb copied the deed, adding it to his notebook. He left copies of his notes at the saloon, the store, the telegraph office, even sent them to the Laramie Sentinel. The editor called it a tall tale but printed it, and soon folks in town were whispering about Red Hollow, some claiming they'd heard the hum near the valley. Weeks turned to months, and Caleb kept returning to Red Hollow. each trip heavier. He found more traces: a broken fence post, a child's shoe, a tin cup half buried in the dirt. They'd appear at dawn, gone by dusk, like the land was testing him. Granger fired him, the cattle still missing, but Caleb didn't care. He was chasing Jacob now, and the land their father had dreamed of. One night, under a moonless sky, he camped by the well, the air thick with the promise of rain. The hum was a chorus now, almost words. "Write our names." He read every name from the ledger: Turner, Hayes, Miller, Reed, his voice cracking as he said Jacob's. The whispers softened, like a sigh. He wrote in his notebook, listing every detail, every name, every trace of Red Hollow. As he wrote, he saw Jacob's face in his mind, clear and smiling, holding a deed that didn't crumble. The next morning, Caleb found a wooden post near the well, carved with Red Hollow, 1874. He ran his fingers over the letters, feeling the land exhale, its weight lifting. By noon, the post was gone, but the hum was silent. He rode to Clara's store, giving her a copy of his notebook. "For your aunt," he said. She nodded, her eyes soft. "You gave them back their name." Caleb packed his gear, the notebook heavy in his vest, and rode out under a sky bruised with clouds. He left copies of his notes in every town: Laramie, Cheyenne, a trading post near the Bighorns. He didn't know if the land was theirs or if Jacob had died chasing it, but he'd done what the ledger asked. He'd written the names, kept Red Hollow alive. As Juniper carried him north, Caleb thought of Jacob, of their mother, of the land their father had gambled for. Maybe it was never about owning it, but about remembering it. The whispers were quiet now, but he knew they'd return if he stopped writing. Somewhere in a saloon or a dusty attic, someone would find his words, read the name Red Hollow, and maybe Jacob's too. The land listened, and Caleb Reed, a cowboy with a horse, a lariat, and a story, had answered its call.